Those 3 words from Coronation Street star Gareth Pierce have sent a ripple of excitement and cautious hope through the Weatherfield faithful, and if you've been following Todd Grimshaw's harrowing journey over the past year, you'll understand exactly why. After months of living under the shadow of an abusive husband, a murder investigation that turned his world upside down, and the gut-punch revelation that his closest friend was the one who pushed Theo Silverton to his death, Todd is finally being promised something that feels almost radical for a soap character who's been through hell: a chance to rebuild, to rediscover himself, and to step out of the darkness that has defined him for far too long. For anyone who's watched Coronation Street over the last 12 to 18 months, the name Theo Silverton still carries a chill. Played with chilling intensity by James Cartwright, Theo arrived on the cobbles as a charming scaffolder with an easy smile and a magnetic presence that quickly drew Todd in. What began as a relationship full of promise soon twisted into one of the most sustained and disturbing domestic abuse storylines the soap has ever tackled. Behind closed doors, Theo controlled, isolated, gaslight, and ultimately assaulted Todd with a level of calculated cruelty that left viewers reeling. He manipulated Todd's emotions, cut him off from friends and family, and in one of the most shocking twists of the entire arc, left Todd's former partner Billy Mayhew to die in the Corrie crash. The abuse escalated until Todd found the strength to report Theo to the police, only for the monster to refuse to let go. A terrifying confrontation in the flat, a deadly game of cat and mouse, and then the moment Betsy Swain's scream cut through the night. Theo was dead, lying on the cobbles after being knocked from the scaffolding above the builder's yard. The identity of the killer remained a carefully guarded secret for weeks. 6 names sat in the frame: Todd himself, Summer Spellman, George Shuttleworth, Christina Boyd, Gary Windass, and Danielle Silverton. Suspicion swirled. Friendship strained. Todd found himself under the dual microscope of the police and the street's endless gossip mill. Then came the flashbacks and the confession that no one saw coming. It was Sarah Platt, Todd's best friend, his teenage sweetheart, the mother of the baby boy they lost more than 20 years ago. In a confrontation on the scaffolding, Theo had insulted Sarah, dredged up the painful memory of their son Billy's premature birth and death, and lunged at her. In fear and fury, she grabbed a metal pipe and struck him, sending him tumbling to his death. Gary Windass helped her cover it up. And when the truth finally reached Todd, the friendship that had been one of the most enduring bonds on the street fractured under the weight of betrayal, grief, and complicated loyalty. That is the landscape Gareth Pierce is now navigating as he talks about what comes next. In an exclusive interview that has been widely reported, Pierce was clear and optimistic in equal measure. "It's going to be about regeneration now," he said. "You don't want to stand still or feel that you're in any way defined by a longer storyline that you've carried. Now, it's about what comes next, but you don't want to make it feel like you're forgetting that story and moving on." But hopefully what we're going to find out is how Todd navigates this next 6 months to a year. We're working to bring some of the humor back in as well. That was a real asset to the character, and I love playing comedy too, so we're bringing that in. There'll be some moments that will feel comedy-tragic because of the story and the dark relationship that Todd has just come out of. That's always interesting to me. I do like the gray and a bit of dark comedy. That's always the type of thing I like to play. Those words matter. For a character whose spark had been systematically extinguished by Theo's control, the promise of humor returning is more than a light-hearted teaser. It is a signal that the writers and the actor understand the need for Todd to reclaim the qualities that made him compelling in the first place: the sharp tongue, the mischievous energy, the ability to needle the residents of the street while still revealing the vulnerability underneath. Pierce has spoken before about how painful it was to watch that spark leave Todd, and how often fans approach him in the street asking when the old Todd will come back. The regeneration he describes is not a sudden reset. It is a careful, consistent process of rebuilding after trauma, one that acknowledges the lasting impact of what Todd endured while refusing to let that trauma define the rest of his story. The timing of this conversation is significant. Todd has already taken a step away from Weatherfield. Alongside Summer Spellman, he boarded a plane to Thailand to visit his mum Eileen and brother Jason, seeking distance from the murder investigation, the fractured friendship with Sarah, and the constant reminders of Theo that still clung to the cobbles. That temporary exit has given the character breathing space, and it gives the production the opportunity to bring him back into a different emotional register. When he returns, the hope is that we will see a man who has begun to process the cocktail of grief, relief, anger, shame, and residual love that Pierce has described so carefully in earlier interviews. The actor has always been at pains to stress that survivors of domestic abuse do not simply snap back to their old selves. The journey is longer, messier, and often marked by moments of self-protection that can look like the old spikiness and sarcasm. That complexity is what keeps the regeneration grounded rather than sentimental. Central to the next chapter is the question of Todd's friendship with Sarah. After she confessed, Todd made it clear that their relationship was over. The finality in those scenes was deliberate and painful. Yet Pierce has left the door carefully ajar. In the same interview, he noted that the bond between Todd and Sarah is one of the longest-standing and most cherished relationships in the show, one that both the actors and the audience would mourn if it were lost forever. "We'll see the ways that certainty is challenged," he said. High-stakes material remains, of course. Sarah is still facing the consequences of her actions, and the moral and emotional complications of having killed the man who terrorized her best friend are not easily resolved. But the possibility of some form of reconciliation, or at least a reconfiguration of their friendship, is clearly on the table. For a soap that has always thrived on the endurance of complicated relationships that feels both realistic and dramatically rich. Then there is the question of romance. Pierce was asked directly whether he would like to see Todd back on the dating scene, and his answer was an enthusiastic yes, tempered with the realism of a soap actor who knows that lasting happiness is rarely the engine of long-running storylines. He recalled the period leading up to the Theo relationship, when Todd had been moving through a series of shorter connections and watching Billy and Paul navigate something deeper and more committed. That contrast, Pierce suggested, left Todd hungry for something lasting, a vulnerability that Theo was able to exploit. Now the character carries the scars of that exploitation, and the instinct to protect himself will be strong. Yet Pierce is clear that Todd is not going to give up hope of finding something meaningful again. You'll have a sense with Todd now saying, "I'm never going to let that happen to me again," but I think he's not going to give up hope of finding something lasting. Fans have already begun floating names. James Bailey has been mentioned in online discussions after recent supportive scenes, and the chemistry between the two characters has not gone unnoticed. Whether that particular pairing materializes or not, the mere suggestion that Todd might one day open himself to love again is itself a form of regeneration. The wider context of the storyline cannot be ignored. Coronation Street worked closely with the LGBTQ+ anti-abuse charity Gallup throughout the development and transmission of the Theo arc. The decision to portray the abuse of a gay man with such unflinching detail was deliberate and carefully researched. Pierce has spoken about the responsibility he felt to do justice to survivors and about the messages he has received from viewers who recognized elements of their own experiences in Todd's story. The regeneration that is now being promised is therefore not simply a narrative reset for entertainment value. It is the logical and ethical next stage of a story that has always insisted on the possibility of survival and recovery. By bringing humor back, by allowing Todd to navigate ordinary life again, by exploring friendship and the tentative possibility of romance, the show is modeling the slow, non-linear process of rebuilding a life after coercive control. Social media and fan forums have, predictably, lit up with reaction. Some viewers are simply relieved that the darkest chapter appears to be closing. Others are more cautious, pointing out that trauma does not vanish with a plane ticket to Thailand or a few witty lines in the Rovers. There is a vocal contingent who want to see Todd's wit return but are equally determined that the show should not gloss over the lasting psychological impact. The comedy-tragic tone that Pierce described seems well judged to satisfy both camps, moments of genuine lightness that still carry the undercurrent of what has gone before. Television critics and soap correspondents have noted that the storyline has already earned recognition at the Inside Soap Awards, with Pierce nominated for Best Actor and the arc itself for Best Storyline. That industry acknowledgement reinforces the sense that the production is handling the aftermath with the same care it brought to the abuse itself. Looking further ahead, the regeneration of Todd Grimshaw has implications for the wider canvas of Coronation Street. A character who has spent so long defined by victimhood is being invited back into the ensemble as a fully rounded presence again. That shift affects everyone around him. George Shuttleworth, who has been a steadfast father figure, will have space to relate to Todd in lighter ways. Summer, who shared the trauma of Theo's violence and the subsequent murder suspicion, may find a different dynamic with the man who has been both a parental figure and a fellow survivor. Sarah's future is inextricably linked to Todd's ability to process what she did. And the street itself, which thrives on the interplay of long-running characters, gains a more playful and unpredictable Todd once more. Pierce's insistence that the next 6 months to a year will be about navigation rather than sudden transformation suggests a measured storyline that will unfold at a pace consistent with the reality of recovery. There is also the practical matter of performance. Gareth Pierce has spoken repeatedly about how much he enjoys playing the comedic side of Todd. The character's earlier years on the street, both under Bruno Langley and after Pierce's recast, were marked by scheming, sharp one-liners, and a certain gleeful amorality that made him magnetic even when he was being thoroughly unlikable. That energy was deliberately dialed down as the abuse intensified because the story required Todd to be diminished, controlled, and afraid. Restoring it without erasing the trauma is a delicate acting challenge, and one that Pierce seems eager to meet. The gray area he mentions, the dark comedy that sits alongside the lingering effects of abuse, is exactly the kind of tonal complexity that keeps long-running soap characters interesting. Todd will not become a cartoon again, but he will, if the promises hold, stop being solely defined by the worst thing that ever happened to him. For viewers who have lived through every painful episode of the Theo storyline, the phrase, "it's a regeneration," lands with particular force. It acknowledges that something essential was lost, and that the process of getting it back will take time, care, and narrative space. It refuses the easy option of simply declaring Todd fine now and moving on. At the same time, it offers the hope that the character fans fell in love with, the quick-witted, complicated, occasionally infuriating Undertaker who could light up a scene with a raised eyebrow or a perfectly timed barb, is not gone forever. The next chapter will show us how he lives with what he has survived, how he renegotiates the relationships that matter most, and whether he can allow himself the possibility of happiness without the constant fear that it will be taken away. In the end, that is what regeneration means in this context. Not a magic reset, not a denial of the past, but a determined forward motion that carries the scars while refusing to be limited by them. Gareth Pierce's words have given Coronation Street fans a clear signal that the production understands the weight of the story they have told and the responsibility that comes with its aftermath. Todd Grimshaw has been through the fire. Now the question that will keep viewers watching is how he rebuilds himself in the ashes. One wry remark, one tentative conversation, one small act of reclaiming his own life at a time. The cobbles have always been a place where characters endure the unendurable and somehow keep going. Todd's regeneration is the latest chapter in that long tradition, and if the early indications are anything to go by, it is one that will reward the patience and investment of everyone who has followed him through the darkest days. Keep watching. The next 6 months to a year, as Pierce put it, are going to matter. And if the humor really does return, if the spark that fans have missed so keenly begins to flicker again, then the regeneration will not only serve the character. It will remind us why we keep coming back to Weatherfield in the first place, because even after the worst has happened, there is still the possibility of something better, something sharper, something that feels, against all odds, like life continuing. What do you think Todd's regeneration should look like? Should the humor come back full force, or do you want the show to keep the shadow of Theo present for longer? And is there any hope left for Todd and Sarah's friendship, or has that particular bond been broken beyond repair? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the latest Coronation Street developments, give the video a like, share it with your fellow soap fans, and make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an update from the cobbles. There's always more drama just around the corner, and we'll be here to break it down for you every step of the way.